Councilmember Conley?
Present.
Councilmember Losi?
Here.
Councilmember Mobley? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson? Mayor
Here.
Trent? Here. Here. Is this on? Okay. Second, my iPad went dead. Okay, our first item is introduction of Senior Administrative Assistant. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'm very pleased to introduce our Senior Administrative Assistant and Deputy City Clerk, Ashley Chambers. Ashley stood out during the candidate selection process as somebody who was very adept at learning software quickly and also able to implement new processes. She's articulate and communicates very well, which we all know we could use. Most importantly, what stood out about Ashley is her enthusiasm to serve this committee and her excitement and willingness to learn. Ashley graduated from CSU Channel Islands with a degree in psychology, so again, maybe she can help us in more than one area. She moved to Humboldt about 3 years ago for the nature and the rain. Even though we haven't seen a lot of that, I'm sure there will be rain in the future. And Ashley is an Aquarius, and she enjoys reading and trying new places to eat, so if anybody has any recommendations, you know where you can find her. Ashley?
Hi, I just finished my first week of work here, and I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to learn more, and so I just am very thankful for the opportunity to work with the city and looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Our next is introduction of Police Officer Logan Mitchell.
I like to do what I can every once in a while to fill the chambers, so looks like we've accomplished that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor Trent and Honorable City Council. Chief Day here to introduce Fortuna's newest police officer, Logan Mitchell. So we swore Logan in on August 2nd, and he's hit the ground running for us. We had our eye on Logan for quite a while, or I should say I had my eye on Logan for quite a while. He comes to us with about 4 years of lateral experience, 3 years with Rio Del PD, and then 1 in Oklahoma. And when I first got here, what I remembered and what stuck out most for me about Logan was that every time Fortuna PD would have an incident that was beyond the ordinary, whether it was critical or just a little bit elevated, he was always contacting a sergeant or the lieutenant asking if he could attend the debriefings. He's been a sponge since I've known him. We're happy to have him. I know he's as happy to be here as we are to have him. And I'd like to introduce Officer Logan Mitchell.
Hello. I just wanted to say thank you all for bringing me aboard, especially to you, Chief. Really do appreciate that. I'm proud to be on this team, and I look forward to our endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Our next is introduction of Community Service Officer Carly Humphrey.
Yes, ma'am. So those of you that know me know I've been in the law enforcement arena for a minute. And in all that time, I've never seen an employee that smiles for 10 hours a day. This particular staff member was promoted from the part-time kennel attendant. And Carly, you can come on up here. I'm not going to bite. From the part-time kennel attendant to our part-time CSO officer, and she has just been Mrs. Personality in the office. Everybody gravitates to her. She's got a positive attitude, and she is also one of those sponge-like personalities that's picking everybody's brain, just trying to learn as much as she can, as quickly as she can. So we're really proud of Carly, and I should say I am very proud of you, Carly, for everything that you've accomplished thus far. She was just recently completed the training officer program under our senior CSO, and she's doing a great job so far. So just a couple things about Carly is she submitted this bio to me, which was about as long as mine, so we had to curtail that back a little bit. So she was promoted to CSO in July, again after serving as the city's kennel attendant. She grew up in Bloxburg and graduated from South Fork. Carly is a mom and has been working towards degrees in both biology and psychology at CR. She loves the outdoors, her dogs and her son, whether it's hunting and fishing, and I actually had to clarify that with her. She's a avid angler and hunter, snowboarder, hiker, all of the above, anything outside she likes to do. And so, like I said, she's hit the ground running. We're very proud of her. I'm proud of her. Carly Humphrey.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight, friends and family, city council members. I really appreciate you guys showing support, and I'm honored to be a part of the Fortuna Police Department. So thank you, guys.
Thank you and welcome. Next, we have introduction of the police explorers.
All right, gentlemen, do you want to stand up and enter the well here so council can get a good look at you? So I just want to say, Mayor Trent and Honorable Council, you probably won't be able to see me behind these guys, but event season was a different season for us this year. We had some recommendations early on to re-implement some of the programs when I came over in 2020, and the Explorer program was one of those ideas that was essentially given to me. And so, we looked at that over the last couple of years, and one of the things that, kind of rang true was that developing an Explorer program does a lot of positive things for the police department in the city. The first being, when we have young men and young women like this that are interested in pursuing a career in law enforcement, it gives us a pool from which to start working with at a young age to get them used to our culture here in the city of Fortuna and the department, and to, kind of shape their future as they go forward towards the academy. And so one of the other things is it really alleviates some of the jobs that our sworn officers have been doing over the last 5 to 6 years with events. And so the 6 young men that you see in front of you tonight helped us with every single thing that we did this year, from the 3rd of July to the rodeo. And they have just continued to be dedicated and serve the city in that role. They're doing everything from traffic control to assisting with the events. They do ride-alongs. They're attending learning domains that our more senior officers are putting on and training them in areas that, they can be helpful and assist the officers that are out on patrol. So I'm going to introduce them to you, but that's a little bit about the background. What these 6 young men have in common is they all went to Fortuna High. They've either graduated last year or are going to graduate in the years to come. And so most of them played football, some of them did not, but they all knew each other and came in as a close-knit group. They were vetted through our school resource officer for having, a set of high values and personality traits that we were looking for in the department. And so I'm very pleased to introduce them to you. The first, and as I say your name, go ahead and step forward, Wyatt McKnight. So Wyatt grew up in Humboldt County and graduated from Fortuna High in May of 2023. He played football and wrestled all 4 years of high school. He is currently the Fortuna Police Explorer Sergeant and has excelled in the role since being appointed. He is currently attending the College of the Redwoods while working on getting his AA in psychology. Wyatt is interested in a future career in law enforcement. Sam Peterson. Sam also grew up in Humboldt and graduated from Fortuna in May of 2023. Sam played football through his time in high school. He's been dedicated to volunteering with the Explorer program while also maintaining a job. Sam has recently enlisted in the U.S. Army and is on the delayed entry program. He wants to pursue a career with the military police while he is enlisted, and once he leaves the Army, he wishes to return to a career in law enforcement. Kenneth Leiloli. Kenneth also grew up in Humboldt, graduated from Fortuna in May of 2023. He is also a dedicated member of the Explorer program and has shown it by showing up to all the meetings on time. He's been available for every single event the Explorers have been asked to work. He has family members that have worked as first responders, and he is also interested in a career in law enforcement. Turner Gurney. Turner also grew up in Humboldt. He is currently attending Fortuna High. He will be graduating in May. Turner works while attending school and still finds time to volunteer with the Explorer program. Turner has great knowledge of law enforcement at such a young age and wants to pursue a career in law enforcement when he graduates. Corbin Martin. Corbin is currently a sophomore at Fortuna High. Corbin's grandfather was a former chief of police for the Rio Dell PD Police Department, and he wants to follow in his footsteps. Corbin has a great desire to have a career in law enforcement, and his dedication to the Explorer program shows proof of that. And finally, Matthew Miner. Matthew also grew up in Humboldt. He's currently attending Fortuna High School, and we will be graduating in May. Matthew played sports through his time in high school and is a dedicated worker. Matthew also wishes to pursue a career in law enforcement when he graduates. Mayor, City Council, I present to you your Explorers.
Chief,
Yes.
some of the family members might want to take a picture if they want to come forward, turn this way with you,
Yeah.
so they could take a picture of their Explorers.
Gentlemen, you want to turn around?
I would just like to say it is a very, I'm not good at this. I'd like to say I'm very honored to be supported by such a welcoming department. It's quite the privilege to be able to be a part of something that can do a lot of great things for our community, and I'm glad that these are all of my friends.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you guys and the police department for all of the opportunities and events and all that kind of fun stuff and hanging out with the boys, for being such a good part of the team and the, I said opportunity. I don't even know. It's really fun, and it's a good feeling to be a part of something bigger than like high school and college. And it's a good feeling to help the community, and I look forward to coming back to it.
I'd just like to thank everyone, like SRO Burley, Sergeant Charlton, they do the most, Chief Day and the Lieutenant. I just thank you guys.
I'd just like to thank all you guys, and I'm grateful for the opportunity and being a part of the team, and to thank the police department and everybody in it for letting us be a part of their team.
I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I am willing to I am looking forward to helping with the events and helping other people. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity for working for the Fortuna Police Department, and thank you to the City Council meeting. I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
I would like to thank all of you on behalf of the City Council for doing what you're doing. And just remember Fortuna PD when you become officers. Come back. Thank you. Okay, now we have oral comments from the public. Anybody in the public who'd like to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda, you have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And anybody who would like to go ahead and go, now you can. Empty our chambers here. Not you, Cameron.
The public, she mentioned the public.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
See, Sue, we can fill the chambers. We can fill the chambers here. Okay, next we have our consent calendar. We have 11 items on our consent calendar. City council minutes, administrator, or all of our departments, I'll just do that. And then report of disbursements, rejection of claims submitted by Carly McCormick, and approval of investment policy. Anybody like to pull any of them? I'll pull number E. So since nobody else pulled any, on number E, let's see, what did I write down here? Oh, there's a ribbon cutting that's planned for September 5th at 5 o'clock for our brand-new basketball and pickleball, included that, pickleball courts down at Roner Park. So everybody's welcome to come down for that. And if you haven't came and look at them yet, come look at them. They are incredible, very, very nice. And then I also wanted to say that I was impressed. The first month of our part-time recreation hours that are being tracked came in under budget. Very good. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I lost my... Okay, we'll move on to business. Our first item on business is a public hearing for the second reading of the adoption of ordinance 2023-760, adding chapter 12.20 to title 11 of the Fortuna Municipal Code to provide rules and regulations for bike and skate park located at Newburgh Park. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'll be providing the staff report on this. So yes, this is the second reading. First reading took place on Monday, August 5th at the last City Council meeting. And again, just to recap that, this is a new city ordinance. We currently don't have any rules to adhere to as far as our current bike park, and we will be adding a skate park in the near future. So we felt that in collaboration with CIRA, our Joint Powers Authority and Risk Manager, along with Ryan Plotz, our city attorney, was time to develop some rules and regulations for both of those facilities located at Newburgh Park. So we haven't had any protestation as far as this goes up to this point, and you'll see you've got the ordinance attached to the staff report, as well as the different sections of the new municipal code for the ordinance. So we've got the purpose and the findings, the definitions, and the meat of the sections is the helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads. Again, we really want to make sure that we're not only protecting the city from liability, but also protecting our citizens, again, because it is a risky activity at those locations. So we want to make sure that we are doing what we can to minimize that risk, both for the city and for the citizens. Of course, this will include, once the skate park is built or the half pipe vert ramp is erected by the Humboldt Skate Collective, that we will add some signage there that also reflects the city ordinance and follows those same rules and regulations. And then, of course, as part of the sections, you've got the regulations of the use and the rules of conduct, as well as any penalties or fines that could be ensued if people do not follow the rules at said bike park or skate park. And I think that's about all I had to add. I can answer any questions if any council members have any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we'll open public comment. Any comments from the public? Okay, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to hold the second reading and adopt ordinance 2023-760, read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Ordinance 2023-760, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna adding Chapter 12.26 to Title 11 of the Fortuna Municipal Code to provide rules and regulations pertaining to the bike and skate parks located at Newburgh Park. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our next item is a public hearing, second reading, and adoption of ordinance 2023-762, amending Title 15, Building and Construction of the Fortuna Municipal Code by adding Chapter 15.48, Construction and Demolition Debris Diversion, CD3. Staff report, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Trent. So this ordinance is being done by the city in part to respond to the state regulation, which has become part of the building code that has been designed to divert non-hazardous, recyclable, or salvageable construction material from the waste stream, and to divert it from landfills to help maintain the goals of AB 939, California's Integrated Waste Management Act of 1989, where jurisdictions throughout the state are mandated to realize a 50% reduction of their solid waste by 2000. Also in 2011, the California Building Standards Code, Cal Green, was enacted with the goal of ensuring that new construction projects would be built in compliance with sustainable practice. Cal Green mandates locally permitted new residential and non-residential building construction, grading, demolition, and certain addition alteration projects to recycle and or salvage or reuse a minimum of 65% of non-hazardous construction and demolition debris. The city has a latitude to adopt its own ordinance that meet or exceed the requirements of the Cal Green standards. The ordinance that was developed by staff and was conducted in the first reading will amend section 15.48, buildings and construction of the Fortuna Municipal Code, by adopting standards that meet the Cal Green requirements. The implementation of this ordinance will facilitate the city's compliance with those state mandates to track and divert and report construction waste that can be recycled or salvaged. The ordinance ensures ongoing compliance with state standards and will automatically incorporate future changes applicable to sections of the Cal Green Code. And it also, the ordinance also complies with California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy, SB 1383. You may recall that's the ordinance that's mandating a number of changes to the solid waste, the reduction of organic waste. And so this is actually one of the requirements for our compliance action plan by Cal Recycle to comply with SB 1383. So a copy of the ordinance is attached. There was one change that was requested by the council at the first reading, which was to change the deposit amount from 1% to 1/4%. And so that's reflected in the updated ordinance attached to the staff report. And what that'll do is it'll reduce the amount that builders would have to put in to, as a deposit up front on a project by 3/4. So reduce it from 1% to 1/4. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions. I'm expecting that there may be some.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Just a real quick question. That deposit is refundable?
Yes. And, some of the exhibits attached to the ordinance also, let's see, they have, hold on, it might have been. Yes, in short, it's refundable if they submit the reporting that demonstrates that what the reduction is. And Matt Nyberg's here. Matt helped develop this ordinance for city. Matt, I don't know if I missed anything or you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, as long as, just kind of an overview of the things. It's a waste management plan that you put at the beginning, and then you make estimates of the materials that are recyclable, and whether it be weight or volume. And then we provide locations where you can take these different recycled materials on the website. And at the end, when they're trying to get their permit, they need to present weights or volumes of the materials that they recycled, and it needs to be 65% of the material that can be.
And, one of the things we did to make it easier too was to add a conversion slip to put the densities of some of the common waste. Otherwise, it requires waste slips, which sometimes can be difficult to get for smaller volumes of material. So we really took a look at this and tried to think about, what can we do to make this easier for implementation? How can we reduce some of the deposit costs, but still ensure that we have some mechanism so there's an incentive for folks to complete the reporting. And so appreciate the work Matt's done on this.
So you mentioned website, so the permit process, everything can be done online, like the other permits that we
I believe it is on OpenGov. I would actually have to talk to Katie.
Yeah, this will be one of the, so our building permits currently are being done online in OpenGov, and so this would be one of the requirements that, one of the conditions that would be included as part of a building permit. And we're already implementing this, and I'll just say that contractors are already used to doing this, or doing it for other agencies, or doing it for the city, but we just didn't have it included in our municipal code. But we were enacting this to be compliant with the CalGreen requirements. We just didn't have it in the city's municipal code.
Thank you.
We have not been taking deposits, so we've been requiring the debris management plans, but not taking a deposit in the past.
Any more questions from council? Okay, we'll open public hearing. Anybody in the public have any comment?
Sue Long, one more step, one more complication, one more fee for building with our housing market the way it is. I would like to request that the deposit not be more than $500 for residential projects. A $600,000 house, 0.25% would be $1,500. It's just more money up front that you have to put out before you can collect any money or get your home started. The city has the power to not issue a final if the paperwork is not done. So having that deposit doesn't really give them any more power than it would have otherwise, because they have the final stamp, the final notice, occupancy, and having a large deposit from contractors or builders or homeowners doesn't really give them any more power than they already have.
Any response?
I mean, this is something that we kicked around. We were trying to follow some of the templates that were provided by Cal Recycle, and Matt might have something more, but you want to? No. But we kicked around the idea of whether we should have a flat deposit or a percentage, and we were trying to figure out something that wouldn't be. We wanted something that would incentivize contractors to actually complete the plan instead of walk away from it, and so that's what we put forward. I think on most residential projects, $500 is probably incentive enough because it's not that big of a task, but I could see on some larger commercial project where that might be enough. I mean, if you were building something, say like the Open Door Clinic, and it's a pretty massive task, you might say, oh, the heck with it, $500, I'm not gonna do the plan. And I think the intention of the deposit is to ensure that the contractor actually does the plan and follows through with it. So I certainly think that $500 would be probably adequate incentive on a residential, but on larger commercial projects, it might just be a write-off, and it might not encourage the contractor to comply, but that's, I guess, my perspective on that. So I think it could be okay for residential projects, but I'd probably keep it as a 0.25% or maybe a higher rate for commercial. But again, commercial projects fluctuate. They could be the same cost as a residential, or they could be a massive $10 million project.
I think Sue was correct, though. The city does have the final say on occupancy, and that's just a box that's checked, right? I mean, there's a checklist that the planning and building department go through, and that's something that has to be submitted.
That's right. Ultimately, if it's not submitted, it's a condition, the city could withhold the certificate of occupancy in the final review. So yes, we do already have that power. And maybe just one question, Matt, did you see, is it essential to include a deposit then with?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. So.
It's just, we looked at what other people have done, and it was actually a lot higher, like 4 times at most other places. So we went with a 1/4, but frankly, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's not any revenue that the city's going to see because it's a deposit.
Right. It's actually more time in management to track, but.
Yeah, that is, for all the residentials, I mean, it still takes time and resources to organize stuff. It's stuff we have to report to the state every year, and haven't been meeting the mark. Frankly, nobody around here has, but we're giving it a go. And yeah.
So what is the purpose of bringing this forward for a deposit if the certificate of occupancy does the same thing?
I suppose the resources eventually, I mean, for all the residential, 99% of them are, okay, the criteria, maybe that would be something to discuss, elevating that to some higher number because of the cost of things now. But I think the bigger projects will take a lot more resources and time, and we're just looking at potential of maybe making some of that back up in cases where the money's not returned because it wasn't enough to make it worthwhile.
But the larger projects pay more for their permit fees. So it's still a deposit, you're still gonna have to do it before you get your final on there. So, and I understand when you said you were just trying to do a template that other areas were doing, but it's not making any money even if it's a larger project. I don't know, as a person who works on larger projects, I mean, we're used to doing it in other areas. Other counties do require it. So we are used to doing it, and there's not a deposit that's been required in any area that we've worked in.
So one of the issues, if you look at, let's see what page it is here. It's on page 8 and 9, section 15.48.040. The deposit would be returned in proportion of compliance. So if you look at E under that section, the official, if the waste management plan compliance official finds that the applicant has not satisfied the diversion requirement for the project, the official shall calculate the applicant's percentage rate of compliance. The official shall then determine whether the applicant has made a good faith effort to comply with the diversion requirement. In making this determination, the official shall consider the availability of markets and for the construction and demolition debris, the size of the project, and the documented efforts of the applicant to divert the construction demolition debris. The official shall then authorize the release of some or all of the deposit to the applicant. At a minimum, the applicant shall be entitled to release of that portion of diversion security project deposit, which equals the applicant's percentage rate of compliance. Therefore, if the applicant has achieved 60% of the diversion requirement, the official shall release 60%. So it's a penalty for not meeting what the diversion requirements are of diverting the 65%.
So you would sign up, we would give occupancy.
Right, but it's an incentive to divert the waste rather than, to comply. So it's not just, do you submit the plan, it's also, do you meet the stated goal of diverting 65% of the waste?
Okay. So can we do a lower rate for the house or for residential than commercial?
I think you could. I mean, you could apply a flat fee. We could modify it. I'm not sure if this would require a second reading or not. We don't have our city attorney here today, but it might be worth bringing it back since the language is going to be somewhat different again. But we could bring that back, and we could include a $500 deposit for residential, and then keep it at 1/4 for commercial projects. Just because the potential for commercial projects to be a lot larger could be significant. So that's certainly something we could do, but I don't think we can. I think it'd be tricky to amend this and get the language perfect and bring it back for the ordinance. So I'd say we want to continue this reading until the next meeting.
Yeah, it's not part of the ordinance, but it is in the exhibit. Yeah, the deposit fee is.
Yes, it's in Exhibit 1. That's right. And it's referenced. So if you wanted us to do that, we could look at that and bring it back if you want to continue this to the September 5th meeting.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so do we just continue this? We don't approve the second reading?
We continue it.
Continue it by motion, please.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we continue ordinance, where did it go? The public hearing for ordinance number 2023-762 to the September 5th Fortuna City Council meeting.
And would that be with
the change for $500 deposit for residential?
Flat rate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Does that require a roll call?
I'll call it.
Okay.
Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, moving on. Our next item is public hearing, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2023-763, amending Title 8, Chapter 8.26, abandoned shopping carts, and determining the ordinance to be exempt from CEQA. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Trent. Honorable City Council, this evening, staff is recommending that council conduct the second reading and adoption of the new abandoned shopping cart ordinance 23-763, which adds Chapter 8.26 to Title 8 of the Fortuna Municipal Code. A full presentation was given back on August 7th. Essentially, the brass tacks goal with this ordinance is to promote an orderly city, protect the environment, and enhance our quality of life. This is a joint work product between the city attorney and the police chief, and we also collaborated with our retailers prior to bringing this to council so that everybody was on the same sheet of music. So as I said, I previously gave a full presentation at the beginning of the month, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Council have any questions? Okay, open public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And do we have a motion?
I motion to hold the second reading and adopt ordinance 2023-763, read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Ordinance 2023-763, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, California, amending Title 8, Health and Safety of the Fortuna Municipal Code by Chapter 8.26, abandoned shopping carts, and determining the ordinance to be exempt from CEQA. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our next one is designating the city's voting delegate for the Cal Cities Annual Conference and Expo. And do you want to give a staff report on that?
I got it. I'll take this one. So I'm sure you're all aware that the League of California Cities, or now Cal Cities, holds an annual conference, and part of the requirements for each annual conference is that each member city designate one voting delegate and at least 2 alternates. So tonight, staff is just asking that council designate your voting delegate plus up to 2 if you'd like. Usually we've done 1 historically, and you can do that by motion, not by motion, I'm sorry, you can do that by simple consensus, or you can do it by nomination, whatever your council prefers.
And then I would just add, typically it's been the mayor and the mayor pro tem, or if the mayor or mayor pro tem couldn't make it, then whichever council members are going to the league's annual meeting and express interest have traditionally been appointed to be the voting delegate in the past. And I know Mayor Trent is the president of the Redwood Empire Division and plans on being at that meeting.
Yeah, I think that's how it should be then, the mayor and mayor pro tem.
Okay, do we need a motion for that?
A simple consensus is fine.
Okay, everybody agree?
Yep.
Okay,
There is a, I'm sorry, there is a motion to make to actually designate who it's going to be and then direct me to submit the form to Cal Cities. It should
Okay.
be there on your stuff.
there is actually a motion on the staff report.
And we may need public comment.
Oh,
too.
sorry. Moving right along here. Anybody in the public like to say anything? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Okay, now do we have a motion?
And this motion is to direct you to.
It's to designate Mayor Trent as the voting delegate
Okay.
and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson as the
I
alternate.
will make a motion to designate Mayor Trent as the voting and Mayor Pro Tem as the alternate, and direct you to
Submit the form,
submit the paperwork.
please.
Second.
All right.
And it says roll call vote?
Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, and our last item of business is a public hearing. Consider adopting the Multifamily Design Standards Resolution 2023-26. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. First of all, I'll just give you a little background. In 2019, the City of Fortuna received a grant from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. It was an SB2 planning grant to streamline planning and permitting activities, processes, update ordinances, and implement other activities to facilitate housing production. And the city contracted with Plan West Partners and Bed Noble Planning to assist the city with the development of those ordinances. One of the first work products that already came through was our accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which our team of Plan West and Ben Noble worked on, and that was approved in 2022. The city is also using its SB2 grant funds to prepare multifamily design guidelines and updated improvement standards and specifications, which are intended to comply with SB 330, SB 35, and AB 211. And Ben Noble and Vanessa Blodgett are on the Zoom meeting call, and so Ben will be presenting a brief presentation remotely to go through that. A little bit more on the background and chronology. On December 7th, 2020, the City Council and Planning Commission held a joint study session to provide feedback on a recommended approach to the multifamily design standards task, and that's included in an attachment to the staff report. On October 14th and December 1st, 2020, city staff also received feedback from a group of local stakeholders on the approach. But we went through this, received that feedback. We did not check back in on the final product, so we received that input, incorporated that input into the draft that previously went to the Planning Commission. And based on the feedback from the City Council, Planning Commission, and stakeholder groups, staff and consultants prepared the draft standards, which are attached to the staff report as Exhibit 1. The most recent hearing held on this was a Planning Commission, which was held on June 27th, 2023, to consider the draft multifamily design standards. And at that hearing, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend that the City Council adopt those standards. So after this action by the Planning Commission, staff identified a number of other non-substantive cleanup edits, and those are the items that are shown redlined in the attached report, and those came subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting, so we wanted to make sure to highlight those differences. And so with that, I will hand it over to Ben Noble to provide a presentation. And Ben, if you're there and you want to share your screen, we'll enable that, and you can run through the presentation with council.
I am here. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, again, my name is Ben Noble. I'm a city planning consultant, part of the Plan West Partners team that's been helping the city with the SB2 grant-funded projects. So I'll add a few things in addition to what Merritt said and go into a little more detail about the proposed standards. First, a few things to emphasize.
Can I interrupt you for just one
Sure.
moment? We're having some of our monitors on the council dais aren't there, so I want to make sure that they can see it. We can see it up in the chambers, but we're not seeing it on the council monitors. I think we just fixed that. So if you could take it from the top, I'd appreciate it, Ben. Thank you.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. So I'm going to add a few things to what Merritt said, a little more detail about what's before you tonight and why it's before you. These are proposed design standards for multifamily development. They're objective standards for multifamily and mixed-use residential development. And they address a lot of the important aspects of building and site design. And they're intended to supplement existing development standards that currently live in the city's zoning code. As Merritt described, this was work that was completed using SB2 grant funds with the goal of facilitating housing production. And the proposed multifamily design standards also implement important goals and policies in Fortuna's housing element. So the overarching objective of this work, along with the other SB2 grant-funded work, is to facilitate housing production, but to do so in a way that ensures quality development, and perhaps most importantly, to streamline the approval process and reduce applicant cost and time. And then to increase certainty and predictability for the applicants, for the neighbors, and for city staff as well. And lastly, these standards are important in order to protect the city given recent changes in state law. So within the last 4 or 5 years, there have been a number of laws that have been adopted by the legislature that focus on facilitating housing production. And these laws emphasize the use of objective standards to approve residential development projects, and also identify types of projects that are eligible for by right approvals where cities can't exercise any subjective discretion when reviewing and approving these projects. So a state law that you may have heard of is SB 330, which amended and expanded the Housing Accountability Act. And one of the things that that law says is that cities actually may not adopt new subjective requirements for residential multifamily development. So if cities want to add new requirements for multifamily housing, they need to be objective. So they need to be measurable or quantifiable and clearly knowable in advance for an applicant. One of the things under the Housing Accountability Act is that cities are allowed to deny or reduce the proposed density of a multi-unit project that conforms with objective standards only with special findings that the project would result in a specific adverse public health and safety impact, which is a finding that's often difficult to make. Another theme in these laws is that subjective requirements cannot be used to deny multi-unit projects. So if, for example, a city has policies or even standards in the zoning ordinance that require some degree of subjectivity to apply to a development project, those standards cannot be used to deny a multi-unit project. So in addition to this emphasis on objective standards, as I mentioned before, there are a number of types of projects for which an applicant can ask for by right ministerial approval. And so you may have heard of SB 35. So for jurisdictions that are not meeting their regional housing needs allocation in their housing element, a project that includes an affordability component and meets other eligibility requirements can request by right approval under SB 35. Another law that went into effect recently was on sites that allow for office or commercial development. An applicant can request by right approval for a multifamily project that includes an affordability component and meets other eligibility requirements as well. And in these cases, for an SB 35 or an AB 2011 project, cities have to approve within a short period of time if the projects are consistent with all objective standards. So because of that, a lot of cities in California right now are adopting objective design standards for multifamily development, similar to the standards that are before the council tonight, really thinking about how best to protect the city if a project is proposed requesting by right approvals under these and other laws. And I should mention that every year the legislature adopts new legislation related to housing production that expands the number of types of projects that are eligible for by right approvals, and we're expecting additional legislation to be approved this year. So given all of that, given the desire to facilitate housing production, to reduce costs and increase certainty for applicants and to protect the city, we have before you tonight the draft multifamily design standards, and they're organized into three main sections. There's the introduction, there's section 2 with standards that apply in all areas, and there's section 3 with some supplemental standards that apply to a few defined character areas. So on the right of your screen is the city zoning map, and it shows where multifamily is allowed. So in the RM district, the NC, the RC, and the CT districts, so really the dark brown and then along the corridors, these are the areas where multifamily housing is currently allowed, and these standards that apply in all areas would apply to multifamily housing in these locations. And they cover a range of topics, really the more important aspects of good site and building design for multifamily housing, things like circulation and streetscape, the location and the design of parking and vehicle access to the site, where buildings are located on the street, how the entries to buildings are designed and how they are oriented to the street, the general massing of buildings and how open space is provided on the site, and then the details of building facades and roof designs, kind of getting more at the architectural elements of the building, and then other site features, things like refuse containers and equipment, and things like that. So those are all covered in these standards for all areas. And we've included two types of standards. There's the baseline standards, which are mandatory for all projects. And then there are what we're calling credit standards. So individual projects can select 4 of the 8 available credit standards in order to satisfy this requirement, which gives them some flexibility to provide sort of an enhanced project design that works best for their particular type of project. And I'm going to point out just 4 example standards that we think are noteworthy. There's a standard related to sidewalks, making sure that if a multifamily project comes in, that's going to provide, a good sized sidewalk with opportunities for street trees, consistent with what the city has been requiring in the past for multifamily projects. There's a standard related to parking placement, with surface parking prohibited between a primary building and the front or side lot line with certain exceptions. I have a subsequent slide that will elaborate on that. We have a standard for entries where we want the primary building entry to face the street with some exceptions for larger types of projects in certain locations. And another example of a noteworthy standard is the requirement for variation in roof forms, or at least a break in a roof form, so we just don't have one continuous unbroken roof element. That's another example of this sort of standard that's in here. So here's a photograph that illustrates the new parking placement standard. As I said before, there's a rule that parking can't be located between building and the street. So in this photographic example, here's a project that would comply with this, where you have a front yard and the parking is between the street-facing building and a building in the back. This is actually a triplex, 3 units on this project. With this standard, there are some exceptions. So a senior housing project where parking between the building and the street might be necessary for functionality. Parking is located in that case, or on relatively large parcels, more than an acre, that fronts an arterial or collector street as designated in the general plan. Parking could be located between the building and the street in those cases as well. So this is just a photograph that's illustrating this proposed standard. So in addition to the standards that apply citywide, there are supplemental standards for certain character areas. And we've defined 2 character areas in the city. We're calling the first one primarily single-family neighborhood, and then the second town center. So on the right is a zoom in of the zoning map, and you can see the area that's outlined in green. That's the primary single-family neighborhood, and that's the medium-density residential districts where there's a predominantly single-family character right now. So even though multifamily housing is allowed in these areas, it's predominantly detached single-family homes where the scale and the character of those existing buildings is predominantly that of a single-family neighborhood. So when multifamily housing comes through, consistent with these standards, we want to make sure that that new development, which will be primarily on smaller infill lots, is consistent with the existing character of those single-family homes. So we have some supplemental standards in these areas. There's a maximum setback, which means that the building needs to be located closer to the front of the parcel, consistent to the existing character of surrounding homes. If there's a larger building, it needs to be broken up. The massing needs to be broken up into smaller volumes. And then there's the requirement for pitched roof forms consistent with the character of existing roof forms in the area. And if you have questions about these or any of the other standards, I can go into more detail on that after the presentation. So the other special character area is the town center. So these standards apply to mixed-use residential projects in addition to just multifamily projects. So if there's a project coming in on Main Street in the RC zoning district that's mixed use, these standards would apply to that project. And there's some unique design considerations for a mixed-use project with residential above ground floor commercial. So we want to make sure that the storefront is sufficiently high enough in terms of ceiling height to provide for quality space. There's some unique considerations about parking access and placement. Again, we want buildings to be closer up to the sidewalk, consistent with the existing design character. And for buildings that are set back from that sidewalk, there's allowed uses such as outdoor dining or landscaping and things like that. We want these buildings to have a more traditional sort of composition similar to what you see on Main Street now, with a base and a middle and a cap and those defined building elements. And also it's important to have street-facing entries to upper floors for the upper story residential uses. So that's a high-level overview of these unique standards that would apply just within this town center character area. So I have a few remaining slides. An important part of these design standards is how it interfaces with the city's design review requirement. So currently, the zoning code requires design review by the Planning Commission for multi-unit residential development. So that's a public hearing where an applicant needs to submit an application along with a substantial deposit that covers staff time to review the application. And then it goes through staff review, and then there's a notice public hearing at which the Planning Commission makes a decision using the design review criteria within the zoning code, which is a subjective set of criteria. What we're proposing with the new multifamily design standards is that these standards would replace the design review process for projects that comply with all standards. So if there's a multifamily project that comes into the city that's compliant with all of the mandatory baseline standards and provides for 4 of the credit standards, that project would be approved ministerially at a staff level without the need for a noticed public hearing with the Planning Commission, and without the need for the applicant to submit a deposit to cover costs associated with that public hearing process. However, if there is a proposed project that wishes to deviate from one or more of these design standards, there's a pathway for that to happen, and that would be the standard design review process. And what the Planning Commission would need to do to approve a project that deviates from the standards is determine that the project meets the intent of the standard, and then there are intent statements within the design standards. And if the project meets the intent through an alternative design strategy, then the deviation would be allowed. So eliminating design review for multifamily projects that comply with the design standards would require a zoning code amendment. And if the City Council supports this approach, as was recommended by the Planning Commission, it would require us to come back to the City Council following Planning Commission recommendation with an amendment to the zoning code. So as I mentioned previously, and as Merritt mentioned, the Planning Commission had a public hearing on these design standards on June 27th. And at that meeting, the Planning Commission voted 5-0, recommending that the City Council adopt the design standards. After the Planning Commission took this action, we identified a few non-substantive cleanup edits that we made to the draft standards that were included in redline, underline, redline, strike through text in the City Council's packet. So staff's recommendation, as Merritt described, is to receive the staff report, receive public comment, and to approve Resolution 2023-26 to adopt the multifamily design standards. So with that, that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Questions and just a comment. In relation to the direction the state has taken over the last 5 years, I really like the idea of having control over the objective with the objective planning standards for the mixed-use residential multifamily development. Understanding that for developers, it's going to make some of the things that they want to do or have done in the past a little bit more difficult, and maybe even a little bit more costly, but also freeing up time constraints with regard to, some of these areas and planning commission meetings and things of that nature. Just a couple of questions. There is a new apartment building on Newburgh next to the Renner Station. And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but the entries are not facing the road. They're there's maybe 12 apartments. It's a nice looking development. So would that have to go to Planning Commission then for a special design review?
So if it's on a site that's more than 1 acre or on an arterial or collector, it would not have to. And I actually don't, Merit would need to speak to whether or not that particular project satisfies that sort of locational requirement.
I haven't looked at that particular project to see if it would comply with these design standards to run through it. But, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, with the state requirements being what they are and getting more restrictive, that really what these design standards would do would ensure a certain character of the different buildings. And right now, we require all multifamily projects to go to design review. So the default, if they weren't able to comply with the requirements, then you'd have that ability with the objective design standards to go to the Planning Commission, which would be more subjective. Ben, would you agree with that statement?
Right. So
their default would be to do what we're doing now, opposed to having that streamlined process.
Right. That's an accurate characterization, yes.
Like I say, I like the control that the standards would present and would bring in. I've got some specific questions with regard to the standards on page 2. Under credit standards under the trees, street trees. And at C, sidewalk tree wells shall be 48 inches in width by 36 inches or more in length. So if somebody wants to put a 6-foot long tree well in, that would permit that to happen. Am I correct?
Yes.
So should we limit the length of that well? And also, it doesn't make it mandatory that trees would be planted in a well.
So my reading of this is if looking at A, B, and C together, where A says 1 tree every 30 feet, and then C says sidewalk tree wells, I would read this together as saying that as requiring a tree to be located in the well. But if adding that clarification would be helpful, we could certainly do that. So that's the first part of your question. On the second part of your question about sort of a maximum dimension of a sidewalk tree well, I think that that's certainly something that could be modified with this. You see cases where the intent of the minimum tree well size is to make sure that it's of sufficient size to accommodate the type of tree that we want to see. That's going to be large enough and provide enough canopy. So that's really why this focuses on the minimum. From my perspective, if you had a tree well that's larger than this or a continuous landscape strip that's full of other types of landscaping, I don't know if that would be undesirable or not. I would, I guess, defer to city staff on that particular question.
Well, and I would think they could be square. I mean, we could include a comment that they're square. Most of the tree wells I've seen, Ben, are square unless we have them larger. I haven't seen ones that are rectangular and longer than they are wide. I guess I just maybe haven't seen all the different types of tree wells. But we could specify square dimensions if there was a concern about them being too long.
Well, I don't work with developers.
Yeah.
You do.
Most of the commercial tree, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you see that as an issue, then, we're talking about planning standards and specific things that they can and should do, and that just seems like it's kind of wide open as opposed to, more specific guidelines. That's all my comment was on that.
I think most commercial rates are probably square, so we could specify, and that would leave it less open to interpretation.
Okay. Then moving on. Page 4. Under number 5, garage width and design. Number 4, landscaping occupying 50% or more of driveway serving garage. Is that really saying that you're going to landscape 50% of the driveway?
So the way this is written is that there are 4 different ways that an applicant can do a few or add a few design features to sort of minimize the visual dominance of a street-facing garage door. So they could do number 1, recess the garage door a little bit. They could do number 2, sort of add some architectural detail to make it a little more visual, add a little visual interest. They could add an arbor above the garage door, which looks nice in some cases. Or they could minimize the amount of pavement that's leading up to the garage door. So 50% or more. You probably have seen what sometimes is called Hollywood strips, where you just have paving for the area where the tires will drive, and the rest has sort of some low landscaping. That can really look nice in certain circumstances and minimize the visual dominance of the street-facing garage doors. But that's just one of 4 different options. The developer wouldn't have to do that. They could choose the other 3.
Okay. It just seems 50% or more of a driveway being landscaped is, I don't know who's going to do that.
Right. So, and in Fortuna, maybe nobody would choose that of the 4 different options, but because it's there, maybe they would consider it, and it could look nice in certain circumstances. But it's just one of 4 options that's available to them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for council?
Just the same comment I had. This is a way for us to retain some control over things and not be subject to dictates from the state, and I think it's good.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting paradigm. You know, on one hand, we're wanting to streamline the process, and then we have these objective design standards that seem, you know, a little more rigorous than we might have seen in the past. One of the things that we rely on in the past, because we don't have design standards published, is our past community development director. She would really work to try to encourage people during the design process to comply with what the general plan policy was, but there were never objective design standards implemented. So it was kind of like, well, what do you need to do to get staff's recommendation that this project be approved? And it wasn't really set in stone. But what this does is it gives us a basis to clearly evaluate that in an objective manner. And so that work had never been done, and that's why the city applied for this grant, to be able to publish those standards and put them out there. And you know, it's a tricky thing. That's why we brought, you know, somebody with an architectural background onto this, because it's, you know, for example, if you're trying to think about what kind of character would look nice in a neighborhood for a new multifamily project, you know, defining these things like, you know, the driveway or the building, you know, the roof pitches or the bulking, or, you know, it's tricky stuff. And I think most people kind of get it when they look at a building, but then to describe those things that really kind of help preserve the character, require a higher quality building, are hard to describe. So I appreciate the work that went into this by Ben and Vanessa and their team. And, but I think having these published, you know, it's a little bit more rigorous than normal, but the default would be if somebody, you know, there's a compelling reason of why somebody wouldn't want to go through that streamlined process, they still have that option to go back to the planning commission for a conditional use permit. So again, it is, you know, so the goals were to kind of preserve the community character, you know, have the streamlined process, but also to really be able to evaluate projects in, you know, an objective way. So it's a little different to, you know, perhaps the conditional use might be less restrictive than where a streamlined process is. It's a little bit strange, but as Councilmember Johnson said, it does tend to insulate us from some of the new legislation coming from the state to really push a, just building by right or a ministerial process for projects with no city discretion. So
And
that was
like
the effort.
right here, you've got a menu of choices.
Yeah.
And where possible to have that, then it's not dictating, it's giving options.
Yeah, and I think there's some, like, is this perfect, or are there some of these design options in here to make things look better? You know, we'll have to think about this and keep notes and consider coming back and amending it when we do the ordinance. But, you know, it's tricky to think of all the things that make a building look better and have a, you know, add to the character. So I expect that we'll be able to change this as time goes by and we get feedback from builders.
And by working with stakeholders, we took things into consideration, and we got feedback from the people that are actually developing property and use that as part of what built this.
Right, and I fully suspect as we start running through some of these, we'll get more very direct feedback on what people like, or if there's any that are very difficult to comply with, and I think we'll rethink those and keep some notes and bring an update back in the future. I just, you know, again, this is our first cut at this, and staff has spent a lot of time kind of working through and thinking about how these would be implemented, and so I think we will have the ability, if we get feedback from the building community, to modify them, make them, easier to work with. And maybe there's, sometimes there's things that, well, is this really necessary? Is this one thing going to really change a character? And the answer may be, yeah, maybe, or maybe not. And I think we'll just continue to think about these as we get feedback over time.
Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking if these designs go through, it will make apartments look less like apartments and more like houses, with the landscaping in the front and the parking in the back, landscaping not, driving up and all you see is cement doors.
Yeah,
A little more street appeal.
And I think that's particularly the case in the area. That's why when we first started looking at this, we were thinking about, looking at all, I drove around with our consultants. We looked at all the multifamily parcels, and some of them really stood out in neighborhoods that, are mostly single family. But it's interesting, like if you look at the area bound between 12th Street and Townsville, or really, there's a lot of multifamily housing projects that are within that area. It's surprising if you look around, a pretty high number, but you would never really know unless you really stop and look at those, because they do blend into the character. And so we kind of took that as an example for the areas where single family homes are, and tried to think about, okay, other neighborhoods, would you want to see, maybe something with a big solid face that doesn't blend in, or would you want to see a project more like the area that we have between, to the north of 12th Street that really do blend in, you don't see as much. And so that's why we came up with that special area. And then of course the downtown area was another area we thought, warranted different standards.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we'll open public comment. Anybody from the public like to speak?
Sue Long, and I have several places marked here. I don't think you're ready to adopt this tonight. I don't know what the best way to go through this is. It's just to give you all my comments, or have been address some of them as we go through, so maybe they're not an issue. If he explains it, maybe I took it the wrong way or something. So I don't know what the best way to do this is. Any thoughts?
Ben, Sue's past mayor and prominent builder in town, and I think she has a lot of specific comments about the design standards. Do you think it would be better to run through those now, or would you like to maybe see those in writing and kind of address those when we bring an ordinance back, the update to the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, I would certainly appreciate the opportunity to kind of look at them and think about them rather than going through each of them right now.
Yeah, and Sue, I would say, through Mayor Trent, if that's okay, if you had general comments or what's your thoughts, I know you shared a few of those with me, like some of the things about build, maybe some examples of the things you have. It'd be helpful for our council to know what you're thinking about. The one that you gave me for the windows, I thought was a good example of something that might be difficult, and it'll give Ben a sense of what might be coming too.
If you guys don't adopt this tonight, I can get you a whole list of things that are concerning in here that I think need to be addressed before you do it. One of the things that Meredith is talking about, and it's not, I forget what page it is. Anyway, talked about windows, and it says that they want to recess the windows 3 inches, at least 3 inches into the building, and they want 2-inch window trim. So when you recess the window into the building, basically you're creating an outside window seal. The seal that you would normally have on the inside, you're creating it on the outside of the building. Now you cannot nail your windows, you cannot nail the window flanges to the exterior siding, which is what you normally do, the exterior framing, and you cannot flash all around it in order to prevent them from leaking, and you've created a ledge for water to sit on, and now you've got to trim out that inside window somehow, as well as adding window trim around it. To me, that doesn't do much to make your building look nicer, and it creates a building nightmare, and it creates just a potential for water leaks, ongoing water leaks. And I just think that's one of the things that I saw in here that doesn't really help the aesthetics. I don't know when you drive by on the street if you're going to be able to say, oh, look, the windows are recessed 3 inches, but it's going to create a building nightmare. That's one of the things. As far as trees, and I probably should go back in order. I love trees, but how many sidewalks do you see where the tree roots have come up and now the sidewalks are all lumpy and you can't really walk on them because of the tree roots? So could we have a list of trees maybe that don't impact sidewalks so that people plant the right trees? Because who knows those kind of things? I don't know what trees to plant to keep the sidewalks in good working order. Talking about fences between buildings and streets, and they said private outdoor space may defined by a low fence, at least 50% transparent. If it's a private outdoor space, these people are already living in apartments. They don't have a yard. They don't have a place to go out and hang out. Why do we have to limit the fences if it's the patio like being low? Why can't we have a fenced enclosure so that people can actually sit out there and have some privacy? That was a concern. And I'll get this all in writing. But another thing I think that I heard Ben say was we want entrances in the front of the building, but we don't want any parking. If that's what you said, I'm not sure how much sense that makes, especially a lot of older people live in these houses. We're going to park in the back. We're going to walk all the way around the building to get inside. I don't know if I heard that right, but to me that doesn't make sense. Downspouts shall be one color and shall not change colors to match the wall behind them. Downspouts are not cute, guys. I don't know if somebody wanted to paint the downspouts so that they blended into the building. I think that would actually look better. I don't know why that's a problem. Fences, plastic, chain link, and other wire fencing materials are prohibited. Chain link fences are one of the fences that last the longest. They need the least repairs, they don't blow over in the wind, and they last forever. You can have privacy by putting the slats in there. So to me, prohibiting chain link fences doesn't make any sense either. The ground floor storefronts in the mixed-use building have a minimum of 12-foot floor-to-ceiling height, except as provided in paragraph below, blah, blah, blah. So the ceilings in my new office are 10 feet, and they are high. To have buildings have a 12-foot ceiling, why? What are we trying to accomplish? I know we're trying to make it look good on the outside, but why do we have all that additional square feet at the top that no one is really using? Retail, what can you put up on your 12-foot ceiling? I don't know. Put shelves up there and put displays that no one can reach? I don't know. To me, that didn't make any sense. I would say 10 feet. So there's just a few of the things. So I think that we're too soon. I don't know who the stakeholders were that gave the input in here, but if anybody was building and they missed that window thing, that just blows my mind. So anyway, I would ask you not to do this. I would get some more input in it and come back with a better plan and a good ordinance. Thanks.
So if we wanted him to look these over and bring us some answers back, would we just continue this to the next meeting, or?
I think we'd certainly like comments. I think some of the comments that Sue's presented, they're good. I mean, buildability comments, can you still have the same impact of having a window not recessed and having a wider trim? Sure. I think there's some great buildability and maintenance type issues, and so we're happy to look at those. Just looking back at the agenda item, though, which is adopting the multifamily design standards, we would plan to bring this back. So Ben, I think if we wanted to take Sue's comments and any other public comments that we got, that we could bring this back again, but I'd like to get direction from the council, assuming we can make a number of specific changes. I'd like to take a look at what Sue's comments are and bring that back. But I'm happy to bring the resolution back, but I'd like to get the indication from the council that you'd like us to start preparing the zoning ordinance once we make any additional changes or address comments that we've received from the public. I don't really want to delay the process much longer. And I know Vanessa's on too. I know we have some timeliness issues to comply with the grant too. Vanessa, do you want to comment on those at all? Is she there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yes, the grant deadline is coming up at the end of September. But that being said, we are working and with council direction, we'll work to get all the zoning ordinance amendment, drafted and ready for city staff.
So then we'd have a couple more meetings, so we could still accomplish that before the end of September then. If we took, if we waited for the resolution and started working on the modification to the zoning ordinance, we could still finish that, probably bring it back the first or second meeting of September?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, what's the desire of council?
Have them answer the question, look at it.
So yeah, what I would suggest then is that we don't need to take action on this resolution tonight, but maybe direct staff to, take a look at any comments that we received from the public in the next week or so, and then bring this back at either ideally the first meeting of September and for consideration, and to direct staff to start working on the zoning ordinance change based on this draft
Do we need to
design
continue
standards.
this, or will they just,
No, I don't think we need to continue it because it's not an ordinance, it's just a
Okay.
resolution.
okay.
I would ask that we also are able to see the list of questions and the responses, whether it's in our next meeting.
When we bring it back. Okay.
I don't like downspouts either. I think they should match the house.
So we'll take that as direction to staff. I don't know that we need a,
Can we also make sure we include the planning commission, they're seeing those comments too? Just, they made a 5-0 vote on it, but if we're going to be changing some things.
yeah, absolutely, and we can make sure to circulate those to make sure to send a specific email. I mean, they should be aware of the council meetings, but they might not look at it and they think it went through, so it's a good point.
Okay, so do we need to do anything with this? No?
I would just consider that direction to staff. You know,
Okay.
Ben or Vanessa, do you have any more questions or comments?
I do not.
Well, that does, okay. Ben, don't think we have to go back to planning commission?
Well, I think we need to figure out what changes we recommend making, and then at that point, we would decide.
Great.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
So we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Trent and council. So just to run through our upcoming meetings, our next city council regular meeting is on September 5th, and that's a Tuesday. And so that's going to be right after the Labor Day holiday. So I just want to make sure nobody shows up on Monday. And then we, as Mayor Trent mentioned earlier, we are going to have the ribbon cutting before the council meeting at 5 o'clock at the Roner Park basketball court. So don't forget that as well. But we made a really nice Measure E sign. Measure E has been asking. So if you happen to be going by Roner Park and take a look at the basketball court, we think we upped the standard for the Measure E sign, and we'll be doing that on all our future projects going forward. So you can let us know our thoughts after that ribbon cutting. Our next planning commission will be tomorrow on August 22nd at 6 o'clock p.m. And our next Measure E meeting will be September 19th at 5:30 p.m. And our next Roner Community Recreation Park District meeting will be on September 6th at 2:30 p.m. And our next Fortuna Business Improvement District meeting will be tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. here in the council chambers. So just a couple other items. One, I attended the Redwood Empire Cal City meetings last Friday. That was organized by Mayor Trent. It went very well. It was very well attended, and so that was a productive meeting for that group. And I think we had 4 out of 5 of our council members there. So yeah, it was well attended by our council as well. Hops and Humboldt is this weekend in Roner Park, so you don't want to miss that if you want to go to a great beer tasting event. And then also today I had the opportunity to introduce and provide a few question and answers with Vince Rizzo, the new owner of the former Palco Mill site, now referred to as the Fortuna Mill Commerce Center. And so Mr. Rizzo gave a presentation on what his group is, what they're seeing for the future of the mill site, and unveiled the concept. And really, I just wanted to let the council know, it's a little bit ahead of the city process. So, they were just sharing what their perspective and what they would like to see on the site. So in the long term, we'll be doing a lot of public outreach, and I'm envisioning doing a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council, really kind of to unveil what the concept is for that site, not including the Fortuna Mill Commerce Center, but also some of the adjacent properties that are under ownership that will be accounted for in the specific plan that the city's working on, environmental document. And it was interesting to hear some of the questions. I really want to share with, how this project will enable some connectivity with trails and roads, and, talk a little bit more about the open space and discuss the impacts and traffic impacts to provide some photo simulations of what the project will look like. So, I'm looking forward to really bringing this in a comprehensive way to the public and getting input on, what the project will look like, and what the benefits are for the community and what the potential impact. So it's the start of a much longer discussion, and it's a little uncomfortable having this out in front before the councils have a chance to see what's going on, but I think it's great to have people talking about it, and we'll be following up with meetings on that real soon. And Vanessa with Plan West, who's on the call too, she's also working with that project, and as well as John Miller, who was a former county planner that works for Plan West now. So we've got a good team working on that, and we've kind of been waiting to get this concept that we're working on with the developer kind of to a point where we're all happy with it, and then start doing the city's work following that. So a lot to come on that in the very near future. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, future agenda items. Anybody have anything? No? Okay, city council reports. Councilmember Conley.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I also attended the California League of Cities. That was great. Of all the extra meetings and whatnot, they probably had the best programs out of all of them. They were no nonsense, got to the point, and they were great programs. Committing chief on the two programs that I've seen the last couple days been brought up. The K-9 program was at the League of California Cities, and then this Explorer program. I commend you on the program. Being part of the fire department for years, we did the Explorer program and got to see lots of Explorers turn into great firefighters, and they're still there, still firefighting, and they came from the Explorer program, so I think that's a great thing. And then Cameron, the basketball courts, man, every time I drive by there, just about 30 people on the basketball court at a time, so they look great. We're going to be playing some softball, so ready for that. And as a parent, I'm ready for those skate nights to be open back up also.
Thank you. Councilmember Losi?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended a Fortuna Parks and Rec meeting on August the 14th. Just some of the highlights. The last week of summer camp, kiddie camp, was had. And of note, there are anywhere from 40 to 50 families that are on the wait list just about every year. So I don't know as far as increasing those, those programs or exactly what, but 40 to 50 families on the wait list is an awful lot. The basketball courts open July the 24th. And it was noted that the USDA accepted the application for the loan for the construction of the pool. Doesn't mean we get it, but that they have accepted the application. And those are the highlights. But I'd also like to mention that on August the 13th, the Pineapple Express food truck set up at the Creations Auto Body shop on 12th Street, with the proceeds going to the Maui Fire Relief. And so the Pineapple Express, if you've never eaten on that food truck or from that food truck, it's amazing food. They do a really excellent job. But there were other vendors as well at Creations. Crunchy Sweet Creations from Rio Del was one of them, and their proceeds also went to the Maui Fire Relief. And the proceeds from the Pineapple Express truck, as well as the other vendors, amounted to a little over $8,100. And Kevin Bradley, the owner of Creations, matched that amount, and there were several other large donations from different businesses in Fortuna, so that the total amount for the fire relief was over $21,000. So just a tremendous effort, and I'm sure that all the people that came out to buy food off the truck and from the vendors out there, it was greatly appreciated. When you see these folks out and around, give them thanks and especially support their businesses, because they are doing some great work out there. And then, as was mentioned, last Friday was the Redwood Division meeting for Cal Cities, and I just have to say, Tammy she organized it, she ran it, she did all the work on it, or most of the work, and just did an amazing job. So I want to thank her, and the staff at River Lodge did a very excellent job as well. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Mobley.
My meetings are actually this week, so I will have something at the next meeting.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Well, I had attended an HCOG meeting last week, and we watched a video on the Creating the Grove, which is a permanent housing unit in Arcata, out on West End Road area. I mean, what do they call that?
Indianola?
Alder Grove Industrial Park area, or?
No, yeah, it's the old Days Inn.
Oh, Project Homekey on Valley West.
Valley West, that's the word I was looking for. And it was 3 5-minute videos. And it was pretty interesting, from conception and the people to move-in date and all. the impact it had on those people and in the community. We also had received the TDA audit and all that for transit and everything, and everybody seems to be doing a good job in Humboldt County, and things are going well there. One of the interesting things was they are doing some test holes for the road approaches for the Indianola overpass, and drilling down 60 feet and with a 18-inch hole, and then pouring it full of concrete, and that's on an 8-foot center. And then at the end of this month, they will be doing a load test to see that it's meeting the standards for building the abutment on. And if it does, then they will start production work in September. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the prep that goes into that and the forethought and things they're doing. And I don't know if I brought this up the last time, but as we've all driven through the maze of cones and delineators and striping on Broadway, part of that is testing things for safety work, and part of that is for a construction work down past 14th Street. But in that area, they have a web page for submitting public comment on your thoughts on that. And there has been over about 3,000 public comments made. And they're going to go through and search all of them and take that into consideration. So that'll be interesting. There is an upcoming meeting in Ferndale City Hall for the future work on the Fern Bridge. And I think it's coming up next week. So it's something to be aware of. And also, I attended the League of California Cities Redwood Division meeting, and it was great. We got a lot of comments on River Lodge. The president of Cal Cities was there, Ali Taj, and he commented on the view from there, that standing where we were standing in the Coho room, you could see out all the windows, and the view in every direction there was just awesome. So there's got a lot of kudos for that, a lot of kudos for the program and the meeting that Tammy worked through and set up. We had a lot of local products that were raffled. Everyone got a ticket when they came, not when they came in, but before the drawing.
Not everyone.
Well, the city of Fortuna staff and council members, we did not get one, which was right, shouldn't have been done. But it was well received. There was local products from local businesses here and in the Eel River Valley. So that was great. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that's my report.
The only person that pouted was council member.
She wasn't even there.
No, no, not that far. So our meeting was one of the most well-attended meeting that we had at River Lodge. We have a beautiful facility. I've been to every district's meetings, and we by far have the best place to have it. I have to thank Mikey and Jennifer. They wouldn't, I'm busy. I'm always trying to do something, and they kept kicking me out, and they got it, which I knew they did, but I'm just a worker bee, so I was trying to help, but they wouldn't let me, but that's okay, that was their job. They did an excellent job making sure everything was out, making sure everything looked perfect. Every detail was done great, and we got lots of compliments from all the people that attended. I was pretty impressed with our canines. I'm always impressed with their demonstrations. So were everybody at the meeting. The comment that they laughed at the most was when the officer said, "The canines love fentanyl." That's one of the jobs they like to do. They like to find fentanyl, and they do. I mean, they had a bunch of bags put out, and the canine sniffs each one and
finds the bag, sits there, and he knows he found the fentanyl. You know, so they're pretty impressive. You know, and then they showed us how they, if somebody's not complying, how they can sick the dog on them and how they can call that dog right back, and how, how well they work. So I always love seeing those. Those dogs are so well trained. And Kane and Blitz are my two favorite officers. And I had a Redwood, the bus.
HTA.
Yes, Humboldt Transit Authority meeting this morning, talking about wages. So I had that at 9 o'clock, chamber mixer at noon, which that was a good presentation in my city council meeting tonight. So it was pretty much full of city today. But other than that, everything's going well in the city, and I'm excited for all the new projects that are coming up. So that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.